Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon from wherever you are listening to this special episode of LinkedIn Live. My name is Naishat Gadani, and I'm the founder of Your Career Down Under. And it is my absolute privilege to bring two experts today on a topic that touches, is really very real for all of our lives right now. A topic on which is uncertainty. What is certain for today's session is today's session will go approximately for 45 minutes to an hour. What is certain is that we will not have disruption. What is absolutely certain that I will continue to smile the way I'm smiling right now. Having said that, there are things which are absolutely uncertain out of that, and I really want to bring perspective to the conversation. As most of you know, I live in Melbourne. We've got Alan who's dialed in from Sydney, and we've got Caroline Brown. She's in East Gippsland. So in a way, we are far, from each other, but virtually we are connected here. I traveled to, from Australia to India for a conference, and the tickets were booked. Everything was booked in December, and then 1 week before we found out that the conference got cancelled. We thought anyway we were doing it for visiting India, so we just carried along with our plan. And we went to Bangkok for a while, stayed there with a friend. Then we went to Delhi, went to Taj Mahal, saw every beautiful place. Then we got to Jaipur, and then we landed up in Ahmedabad. And you see, I'm in Ahmedabad right now, and and then everything started to shut down as if as I moved on to those places, everything started to really shut down. But what really brought up the whole thing is around what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know. It's a very fluid situation, and I think it is. That's why we wanted to come on this LinkedIn Live, not to preach anything to anyone, but to just share some of our ideas and some of our thinkings, as we all are in similar boat of uncertainty. So that's the sort of a context of this. I've got probably a few things that I want to talk about. But if you've got questions, that's the most important. If you've got questions about anything that we speak about, Alan, Caroline, or to me, since the LinkedIn Live platform that I use doesn't have the feature where I can actually see those comments or questions, please send it to me on my LinkedIn message, and I can immediately have a look and ask Alan or Caroline for that. So before I do anything, welcome Alan and welcome Caroline to this LinkedIn Live.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm actually, one of the things that we were sort of discussing a little bit before we were, going live was well-being and looking after yourself during this time. So I'm actually down in East Gippsland in the beautiful, near the Gippsland Lakes. So it's really quite calming to be out in a lovely environment, basically. So, I just thought I'd share that. And I love the fact that we're doing, you're in India, Alan's in Sydney, and I'm in Victoria, and collectively we're still connecting around this topic, which is really important. So thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Alan.
Yeah, thanks, Naishat, and likewise, like with Caroline, it's a great privilege to be here and sharing the screen with you and sharing, making virtual reality, making it happen. Yeah. So, I think this is a very appropriate topic of the time, as you've mentioned. But one of the first things I would just simply say or share with everyone, you glossed over it, Naishat, in your introduction. We deal with uncertainty every day. No one knows what will happen 1 hour from now, 2 hours from now, tomorrow. But under these circumstances, when we feel in control or when we feel we have the power to manage that, and that power comes from our previous experience, then it doesn't sit on our mind. It doesn't seem to impact us in the same way, but it is still there. Uncertainty and change are some of the constants of life. So what we're really looking at is
Mm,
what happens to people who experience unexpected or traumatic change,
mm,
which means that they lose the sense of control or the sense
mm,
of power to manage that. So, I just think that's probably a good starting point. This morning I
yeah.
listened to our Prime Minister speak,
Mm,
and among a few things which he said, I really applaud him for. One of them was, in these times, we have to focus on the knowns. We have to
mm,
be able, what will get us through is the knowledge that we have met challenges before,
mm,
successfully met them before.
mm,
And if we focus on what is known to us, and there is a tendency when we have sudden change for us to focus on the what ifs. We go into
mm,
possibility thinking, but the possibility thinking there is downward spiral thinking, in the words of Ben Zander. So, I think that's a really good context from our,
mm,
a little bit of
yeah,
leadership from our Prime Minister this morning. Good
yeah,
advice. In these uncertain times, focus on that which is known. So
yeah,
that's my
yeah.
little introduction.
Excellent. Yeah, yeah, no, that's really great. And one of the premises that I obviously want to open up the discussion is around, I'll probably give my example. I have not seen this kind of uncertainty. The only thing that I can closely think of was many years back when the city that I lived in Ahmedabad, we had a lot of communal riots going on, and at that time, I had a sense of uncertainty. What will happen? What will happen to the work? What will happen to the life? What will happen to the quality of life and everything else? And I've never had that uncertainty ever. So I'm just not trying to make Alan you feel old, but you've seen around political uncertainty to business uncertainty and a lot of other things. Does it also play a role that the body of your the experience that you have also helps you to become more centered around it, and the young ones feel more erratic around it? Does it also play a role in that?
Nice. Well, thank you for recognizing that I'm a little more mature than you. I've been around a little longer, but I haven't experienced the sort of things that we are currently experiencing in Australia and overseas. I was born in 1952, but so I'm a post-war baby, if you like, and I'm a baby boomer. But that within itself shapes how individuals will respond to sudden change. I guess a good point that we made earlier in discussions made by Carolyn is that how different people will respond to unexpected change
Mm,
really depends upon the person. I would take that
mm,
one step further and say, look, I work a lot with, and I believe in type and temperament theory. And we are wired, if you like, from very early age, from 0 to 3, to work
mm,
with our environment. So, how you respond to change is a function of type, but it's not only that. That's
mm,
experience does shape a lot. Personally, how can a farm boy be now suddenly on a global stage? No one could predict
mm,
that. So there is a matter of character
mm,
also which comes into play, and so on. I have experienced redundancy personally. I've worked with many people who
mm,
have and are experiencing redundancy and changes in work scenes and so on. And it's really interesting that when you go through that experience, what this feeling of powerlessness can do to your whole thinking. You can be a good, strong person, you think, and suddenly it can be a very debilitating experience. And,
mm,
the listeners would not be aware that, you have been in isolation, for the last week or so in India, and you are looking at
Yep.
being in isolation when you return to Australia, for a substantial period of time.
Yep.
Now, there is some psychology around the impact of isolation and so on individuals, but we no need to go into that today. But I think the point we're making is change is constant. Responses that we make to change are personal and individualized. And the way through all this is to work with the knowns. The past is still the best predictor of future behaviour. So, in these troubling times and worrying times, it's always good to begin your reflection on how have I dealt with this before.
I think it's also there's I just thought, just to pick up on a few things that Alan's talked about is there's a few reactions that I see in myself with change, but I also see in my clients with change, and they sort of, we are kind of wired for a fear response. So quite often when there's a sudden and unexpected change, you have this sort of body type reaction that then drives a lot of responses that you do, and they're kind of reaction kind of responses. So I thought I might just share a few of those, because I think the first thing is to go, okay, I am anxious, I am in fear, I'm dealing with my own anxiety, but I'm also dealing with society anxiety as well. So I can control, at some point how I feel, but I'm also very attuned to what other people are feeling, and I'm going to respond and be triggered by all of that. And some of the responses that I see in myself and in my clients are things like getting angry and irritable, action, like reaction, action, procrastination, not actually doing anything, the usual addictions that we all have, like, alcohol, smoking, online gaming, phones, all that kind of stuff. And then sort of reverting to, like, that thing that I think you sort of alluded to it, Alan, which is that what are we kind of programmed to do without even thinking about? So I see that, when people have suddenly lost their job and it's been a little bit unexpected, or even if it's been expected, that's the kind of processing thing that people need to go through before things sort of stabilize, and you can actually activate that more compassionate, creative, empathetic part of your brain that helps you move forward in these kinds of things. So be useful to know from you guys what, when you've come up with that kind of shock of change, what's actually worked for you in that kind of scenario as well. So I know personally for myself, it's, okay, I'm having this reaction, so what can I do to break the circuit a little bit? Can I go for a walk? Can I do some meditation? Can I reach out and connect with other people and see if that's a normal experience? Those sorts of things. Can I sit in front of the TV for a while and have a glass of wine just to chill and take my mind off things? So, I'd be interested to know what's worked at that kind of initial shock stage to steady a state, to then be able to focus on the known, and then focus on how can I extrapolate from the known to something that I can actually do.
Yeah. And I also want to, I think I'm facing some difficulties with video and audio. So, I'm trying to resolve it, but it's part of the uncertainty of doing things. So, that's the uncertainty life for everyone who's watching this. Okay, but we will just carry along with it, because there are things that I cannot control, the speed of the internet and everything else that I really cannot control. So we'll just power along. One of the things that I have kind of noticed is action, but usually it's the action is immediately I need to get back into the control of things. Do we also sort of are afraid of feeling powerless? Are we afraid of that suddenly I have no control over things? And I've been always taught in positive thinking or in a many people, you go to school, colleges, and everywhere else, you've been continuously told to be positive, to never lose the control, to be like a warrior and be victory. And suddenly, all those things that have been taught suddenly feel, hang on, it's not working at all. I just don't know what to do, but I still want to sort of carry along. So there's a gap that I have observed. um, you know, I don't know what gap do you call, Alan, that particular gap, and how do one really kind of get close to that emotional aspect of that?
I think it's important what Carolyn raised. It's important for us to remember that with sudden change, then you go through a grieving process. So it's important, first of all, to recognize that we are grieving. We have lost something which we thought would be there. So in any grieving process, there will be a time, emotions will bounce around, and it's good to get that emotional content out and acknowledged, recognized, and dealt with. And part of those emotional responses is also anger, the anger of the being made feel this way, of powerlessness. When working with clients who say have lost a role or their position has become redundant, it's important that they remember they are not redundant. They are still the same talented, gifted, good person that they've always been. It's just that the position they were holding has gone, and therefore those talents that they have to offer are not required. So I think it's really important to get clarity and around some of these sort of critical issues. Clarity is power. The clearer we are about things, the more powerful we become. So one of the early processes will be to increase clarity around what is the situation that you are in. For some people, it will be really important for them to get clarity about how they have come to be in that situation, and that it is not their fault. They are not to blame. There's a more systemic thing happening. Or if it is that they have to own some of the responsibility, at least they can be clear about what it is that they can take responsibility for and not worry about all the other things. They can focus on that for which they have responsibility. So the first thing is to get clarity about where you are, where you've come from perhaps, and where you want to get to. This change is an opportunity to shape the rest of your life. And I think, I was sharing with you offline, with the clients that I work with, almost without exception, 40 years plus executives whose position has become redundant and they find themselves no longer employed. 99.9% of those people, when given the choice, and choice is critical here, when given the choice, will say, I don't wish to be full-time employee anymore. I really want to take this opportunity to redesign my life, to change my lifestyle. That why should I work 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours for an organization that really didn't value what I was contributing there, et cetera, et cetera. So there is really in these moments, a moment, if you like, of grace. It's a realization that they do have the power to shape the rest of their life, but it lies within them. It doesn't, was it William Glasser, a great psychologist and the founder of choice theory and reality therapy, says, choice is fundamental to happiness, and choice is fundamental to engagement and commitment. And when you give people choice, you are in fact empowering them. And so, this is really applicable in what I might say intervention strategy. That is, when your person is in crises and you're trying to help them through, is to look for and explore and identify what is possible for them to work towards and give them choice. As a preventative strategy, and we haven't really touched on that because I set the context by saying setting unexpected change, but a good question is, well, okay, how do we better prepare people for rapid change? It's a fact of life. IR5 is already starting to take shape, and we're still struggling to understand what IR4 is all about. and what cyber connectivity is all about. And, technology can allow us to go further and faster, but not necessarily better. So, what can we do in schools? What can we do in families? What can we do in communities and organizations to enable people to be better, able to manage, look for, and manage the changes which are certainly going to be in front of them? Of that, we can be sure.
Excellent. Caroline?
Yeah, so it's some wide-ranging things that you've covered, Alan, and I think, we do come from an environment where still, if you're working, your day's laid out for you. You've got a structure, you've got things that you need to achieve, and then suddenly you've got no roadmap in terms of what's forward for you, particularly say looking for a job. And I think just in terms of some of those questions that you raised around, finding a compass for yourself, I think what a lot of people do find useful is actually talking to professionals, whether that's, career guidance counsellors or psychological counsellors or other types of counsellors as well, because you can get that kind of internal shift happening. So when you're in a process of grief, you can't see grief, but if you're guided through some sort of therapy or some sort of counselling or some sort of psychology around identifying what's important to you in a role, and that great reminder of what your strengths are, uncovering what your strengths are, uncovering what your values are, that does become a great compass as to what it is that you want to do next. And it's actually a very difficult thing to do on your own. It's very easy to slip back into what's just happened to me. What can I, is it something about me? Why me? All of that kind of stuff as well. So, on a very practical level, there's a lot of resources out there like us that can give you that or take you on that journey and then give you that kind of grounding in, okay, what are the skills, talents and values, what's important to me and what's available to me in this market, and how do I then, start to position myself with a level of dexterity and agility to take advantage of what those things might actually be. Because the job market, for example, has been changing, rapidly. Again, what you alluded to, Alan, it's, we're in a global world. We've got global tools. We've got technology coming. We've got we've already had a workforce that was becoming a lot more casualised and a lot more contracting. So, we've been talking about that need to be, that idea about having that portfolio career for a long time. And I think that's what we're going to see is, we've got uncertainty around the job market, but there are still businesses that need assistance, and so it's what's important to you, what's important to them, and how can I match myself up to that scenario. So, it's a very fascinating time, and it's not. I don't think it's well taught in schools or universities because it requires a level of agility that's beyond that in some ways. So. That's my 20 cents on that. It's a different time, and it will be a different time for a long time.
Yeah.
But a lot of the tools are out there. A lot of things great things people are doing are already available to you. I mean, the fact that we're all having this great conversation in different continents or different parts of Australia.
A great point you're making there. Sorry, Caroline, if I can just jump in here. The great point you're making here is that this is a pursuit which you do not have to do alone. We tend to operate out of a health model that says when you don't go to the doctor if you're well, you go to the doctor if you are sick. We tend to not take our car to the motor mechanic if it's performing well. We only take it when it's broken down or not performing well. And so this mindset really shapes a lot of our thinking about a lot of our endeavor. But, when we look at it, the one thing that all successful people have is that they have a coach. And, so it's almost like, having a coach is an aid, if you like, or an extra means of becoming successful. So counseling and coaching, I think we need to change a mindset around the value of having a counselor/coach, and particularly in terms of life design, people with life design coaching experience. Now, as a coach, I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not a counselor. I do do a lot of counseling, but in a loose term. But my method, my practice is more based around coaching. And what I take from coaching is simply this, that if we want to improve performance, doesn't matter whether it's sporting performance or business performance or relationship performance or something, I can look at one of four P's, if you like: passion and purpose, which are both intrinsic, will give us a great sense of the possibility of what to do. So passion, purpose, and then process and product, which are extrinsic, are the other two corners, if you like, of this, what we might call the performance rectangle. So if you want to improve your performance in any endeavor, look towards getting greater clarity around your purpose, your passion, which drives it, the processes you're going to use, or where you want to, the product that you want to end up with. And that very simple little framework has proven to be tremendously helpful in so many different scenarios, in whether it's working with an individual or a team or an organizational head, because as leaders, this is something that we need to be doing. And as leaders of communities or leaders of organizations, and we firstly need to be in touch with ourselves. Secondly, we need to be in touch with the diversity of people that we're working with, and the richness of diversity, and the limiting nature of homogeneous organizations. So, not only are we becoming aware of diversity, but really valuing it, and getting many, many different opinions helps shape possibility and make, turn into a more a process of greater chance of success. So, I really appreciate you, Caroline, mentioning that notion of getting assistance, and walking the walk with someone will certainly enable you to be more successful and to move through. The other point you made there was, which was also very good, was around the influence of technology, and we're seeing the benefits of that today. And aside of that, a very wise person said to me, just a couple of years ago, Alan, the more high tech we become, the more high touch we need to become. And so, one of the things that we need to help people of all ages with, is that when the going gets tough, is not to necessarily retreat into your own world, introverts will, that's firstly, but you need to also see the solution not only within you, but around you. And so, this is remembering you're not in this situation by your own fault. You're in this situation because of whatever changes are happening, but you are the one that's going to have to manage away from them. So thanks for those 2 points. Yeah.
That's really interesting. One of the things that I can pick up from uncertainty and how it impacts people's careers, because obviously one of the things that I want to pivot this discussion is around career. I recently found out one of my clients started the job last Monday, I think, and then he was asked to leave on Thursday. So just 3 days, right? First job as a migrant, he got it. He was so excited, and this happened. And that also reminds me of a very powerful discussion that I had with the client who was injured at work, and she was also contemplating uncertainty because her insurance payment was going to be cut off, and she has only worked as a horticulturist for more than 20 years. And a week before her payment was to cut off, which we had our last interaction, and we sat down, and she was a bit down for obvious reasons that she will not have an ongoing payment coming through to the insurance agency. And she was absolutely concerned about what the future holds for her. And I started to sort of, have, because that was the last meeting, so I started to have a very open discussion with her. And I said, why did you become a horticulturist? What do you really like about the work that you do? And she says, I enjoy going outdoors. I enjoy when I see a great garden, and I really want people to have great gardens in their backyard. And I said, now think about this, is that you have this purpose that excites you, and then you've got this injury that doesn't support you in a way that it used to, but you can still pursue a purpose. It doesn't stop you pursuing the purpose, right? You think that having a wrist injury has kind of completely taken away that purpose from you. I said, no, the purpose is still there. The
Yeah.
means to achieve
And the
the
passion.
purpose, you might have to change that, the means to achieve that. And then her light bulb went completely on. She said, oh, I never thought that way. And I said that that's how I feel, is that we in uncertainty, we don't lose the purpose of our career or work. It just becomes disoriented, or we might have to scrap it through a little bit, to really find that purpose again, because that's what will again excite you to go back and do something more meaningful, right? And that's what I want to sort of come to, is that how do we really connect to the purpose? Because I think that's an anchor point of that drives you. Sometimes it's just the purpose is to see, my son playing cricket. That's the purpose of for that day. So if he doesn't, what do I do to achieve that? How do you, Caroline and Alan? How do you really connect that anchor point?
Well, that's kind of like what's the meaning of life type question, Nation. Sometimes it's just little. There's processes that you go through with a career counsellor around, what your values are, what your strengths are, what your innate talents are, and that kind of thing. But sometimes the clues are already there, like you already know that, and it's sort of having curiosity to some things that really light you up when you do them, those sorts of things that you're absolutely drawn towards doing, how you feel when you're doing them or after you're doing them. Those are sorts of little clues. I think sometimes we get very confused, like, we talk about passion. We need to have an underlying self-driving passion to do da-da-da-da-da, and therefore we want this big, huge light bulb moment to, reveal what that is. But I think the clues are the little clues, really. And, if you're working, it's that quiet sort of observance of what it is that actually, you feel while you're doing it, or what are some of those things that people come and routinely ask you for, what are you known for within the organisation, that type of thing. So, when people talk about, find your passion, it's more, I really think it's like, be curious about what's going on, like be present and be really curious about what's going on for you while you're doing it, or that type of thing. In my own career change, I only found my direction after experimentation. So it was, I've got this set of skills. I don't want to work in the corporate world. What else could I be doing out there to see, what I really enjoy, where there's a demand for it, and can I take myself in that direction? So there is also that kind of experimentation type phase. And I suspect, when people are losing permanent jobs, that again, going back to that sort of what's available to you, what does that mean for you? Are you enjoying that? Is that something that you can actually pursue in the future? Which is kind of like what you're saying with your horticulturist lady. How could she express that in a different way? It's one thing to express it, but another thing for that to be available for her to express that as well. So, yeah.
There's another saying that to err is to be human.
Yeah.
And even more human to blame someone else.
No, I love that.
and what that is saying is drawing attention to the fact that as humans, we tend to look outside ourselves for the solutions. And So through schooling, the schooling that we're all products of, it was very rare that we were asked to explore what our passion or our purpose might be in life. In some schools, it would have been. In faith-based schools, for example, then it's more likely that that sort of question will come up to you. But it's not a question that we are experienced in reflecting upon or having to answer. But I think, so that's a sort of a first point I'd make in adding to what Caroline just said. The second thing that I would suggest to you is that we are also products of career development theory, which was based on baby booming ideology and context and situation. So careers are not logical, sequential. My career certainly is not logical and sequential. I know yours has not been. Naisha, I think you studied as an engineer and now you're a social engineer. So the engineering has remained there, but you're not doing what you initially trained for, and Caroline, much the same. So, theories that if we do some self-exploration, if we do some occupational awareness work, people will be able to make a decision. It's too easy. It's logical, sequential, and doesn't work. So the theories that seem to be more helpful, but because they are more difficult to manage in a sense, the theory of happenstance and chaos theory in recent times, both of these theories seem to appreciate better the other factors that influence career decisions and career life and life choice and destiny. So one of the things that we need to do, I think, is to start thinking differently about the task in front of us. And that's why when I went into private practice in 2007, one of the first things I had to do for myself was to re-articulate a career development framework. And I went to the world of the marketplace to find that, because what I noticed was the whole world is a marketplace, and in that marketplace, which is oversupplied, by the way, there are only two types of people: buyers and sellers. And contrary to belief, the seller does not set the value. The buyer sets the value, the seller sets a price. And so a few things which were good lessons for me to learn at that time. And so, I'm sharing this experience because it's also making the point about becoming a lifelong learner and, a mindset around that. So when confronted with unexpected situations, once you deal with the emotion of having been placed in that situation, you get to, well, okay, what can I do about this? You can only do work in those things that are known to you, increase your knowledge to increase your power or your ability to shape the world that you want to have for yourself and which will be good for you and for the world. So, I think it's really useful for us to just ponder on these sorts of ideas in terms of where do we start? Well, whether we like it or not, we start with ourselves. Secondly, look for who can best help us. And look for a person who understands what you are saying, who can hear you and can understand you, not necessarily empathize with you, but having a coach or a counselor who asks really good questions. They're not here to provide solutions for you. They are here to help to raise the questions which will enable you to make the choice or the decisions to do the things that you instinctively want or need to do.
I really like your point on
Yeah.
the buyer and the seller. I think a lot of people, I think there's absolutely one of the conversations I always have with people when we're working on LinkedIn profiles and resumes, which are, a marketing document, is it's important what you want, but it's framed in how that can add value to someone else. And I think a big mistake that people make is to not think like that. It's, you've got to find a match with what you want, but ultimately it comes down to how you're serving that organization with your set of skills, and what is the value that you can deliver. And, you know, Alan, it seems like you've gone down a similar path to me in terms of finding, you know, what you're doing now with, you know, exploration in the market, you know, of yourself in the marketplace before. But it really, when you're confronted with no steady income and what you're going to do next, it really does come down to, you know, how do you help that organisation achieve something that's important to them with your set of skills. And that I think that is, you know, in terms of looking for a job, if I could give absolute advice to almost every single person, that's what you've got to be thinking about. What can you contribute to other people, and then is that a match for you too? That you know, because it's always about what is, you know, for other people. So, and that comes across in, you know, how you meet with people, what you've got online, what you've got on your resume, what you say in interview. You know, it's really that kind of deep level of listening, you know, even being able to articulate their issues better than they can themselves, and think about yourself as the solution, the solution to that.
Yeah. Look, I'm very fortunate that I have met and now work with a man by the name of Dr. Brian Schwartz. And Brian is an American psychologist who 9 years ago decided to leave America, and he now lives in China. And he and I met some 3 years ago, and you know, my learning curve just went up immensely. He has developed a tool, a self-assessment tool called Career DNA. And it looks at 6 key factors of self. And built into one of those 6 factors is your skills DNA. And I think this is another way of defining, if you like, passion and competency and purpose. If we understand what skills we're using when we are in psychological flow, wouldn't they be the skills which are going to bring us greatest life satisfaction and happiness? So by working with Brian, it's been a revelation to understand a few things. Firstly, in career development practice and theory, we've been preoccupied with employability. We need to become more focused and more interested in entrepreneurship. A subtle difference. If we're looking at entrepreneurship, then we need to look at the questions then become, where does creativity and innovation sit? Because creativity and innovation give us agility and resilience and adaptability. And they are the key characters that we'll need in IR4 or 5. You know, so when, you know, when are we in flow? What skills are we using when you are in flow? And how can those skills be graphically represented? Now, Brian is an undergraduate in chemistry. So his solution is he then helps you through Career DNA conceptualize your skills you're using from reflecting on 7 little stories about when you're in flow from different stages of your life. He then helps you understand that graphically by looking at a molecule and using a molecular structure. So what he's saying is, look, skills don't sit alone. They are forming teams and et cetera, et cetera. It's a brilliant and very empowering process. Now, I'm really waiting for this virus to pass the world scene, and I'm wanting to bring Brian to Australia so that we can share his insight and wisdom around Career DNA, why the 6 factors, and in particular this breaking open this concept of, you know, career of the skills or the technique of understanding who you are through your skills that you're using when you are in psychological flow, when you're performing at your best. I think there's some real secrets in that, and yet it's a very simple life design approach to helping people not only manage but thrive in periods of change, because it's actually giving them choices, you know, through self-knowledge and choice, and you know, they suddenly discover that you know, life can and is much better when you move forward.
Excellent. Now that brings us to, you know, one of the last things that I want to talk to you about is around what should people do now, and specifically I'm talking about people who are still looking for work, people who've not found anything, or people who've been retrenched or made redundant just because of the COVID-19. What are some of the things that they should do? We'll start with Caroline. If you want to talk about 2-3 things that people can do, straight away, to alleviate or to reduce that pressure, or to give them some idea of what to do. What are the things that they can do?
Yep. Well, I think recognize that you're in an anxious state and try and manage that and regulate that. I think that's number one, because then you're going to be able to start to, in whatever way that works for you, and it works, in different ways for different people. So try and regulate that, because then you're going to be able to start to think more clearly and more practically. I'm just going to say on a very practical level, what I know is that when I look on LinkedIn, for example, I see a lot of profiles that are really badly updated, or out of date, or don't reflect the value that people can offer. So that's a really practical thing. It's like, go through that process of working out what skills that you have, what jobs might be in demand, and get your LinkedIn profile up to date and expressing that value. And then the third thing I would be doing is making sure I'm absolutely on top of jobs that are becoming up there and available, and start to use your networks to help you get insights into what those jobs are, and start that process of referral. Don't be afraid to take short-term jobs, because I think actually in this market, if you've just lost your job, your fundamental basic human need is security. What are you going to put on the table? How are you going to pay your mortgage? How are you going to pay your bills? So you might want to look at, what's absolutely essential and what's not, to try and, set up a budget. And you might end up taking, a part-time job to meet those needs. So don't be too proud to take up those kinds of opportunities, if that gives you that fundamental security headspace to start then exploring, what can I do that is aligned or more aligned to what I want to do longer term, because that might be part of that, break the anxiety type thing. Normally in a different market, I wouldn't say that. I would say give yourself some space to do that. But in this market, I think it's important that people get moving and get working, because a lot of things have actually stopped. So that would be it. Try and reduce your anxiety. Work out the cause of that, make sure that you can meet your fundamental needs, and then start to think more creatively and use the power of your networks. But using the power of your networks is by making sure that people know the value that you can add. And then, we've talked about the global power of LinkedIn, and we are actually, as globally as this virus is spreading, we're all globally connected as well. So, there's opportunities everywhere. So make it visible, like basic hygiene things on LinkedIn profiles. People haven't updated or filled them out, or, people don't understand what other people do. So, and you're a human, so talk to people in a very, very human way, and respect also when you're out there with, say, for example, networking, that people are going through that same level of shock that you are right now as well. So don't immediately rush in to ask somebody if they've got a job that you could do right now, because you will absolutely put them off, basically. So I know I've said that in a kind of garbled way. Under a different circumstance, I might put them in point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, but I hope that,
that's all right. I'm making some points. Don't worry.
Sorry, Nisha?
I'm making some points so that we can share that. When I'm making some points so that we can share that, with LinkedIn network using a graphic, and that's very important. Ellen.
Well, one of the beautiful thing about following Carolyn is that she says it so well. There's such wisdom in what you're saying. And if I can maybe just express it in a slightly different way. Look, I grew up on a farm. I understood from very early an age that there is a season for everything. And I watched my father, who was a very successful farmer, plant crops, nurture crops, harvest crops, and then fallow the field. So I knew that there is a cycle to life from very early. This will pass. So how can Carolyn's point, how best can you use the time, the gift of time that has been given to us? It is a time where we can clean out some cupboards, we can, spruce up our LinkedIn profile and so on. It's also a time where we can really reconceptualize what sort of product are we. If we're going to enter the world as a seller of something, what are we selling? What is the value, or what is the value that I can bring to organizations or situations? Because that becomes your key marketing and your key selling point, in that very, very crowded marketplace. So I guess what is supporting your idea, Carolyn, of using this time towards your next stage. This is, we're all entering another chapter of our life. This phase will pass. We need to be ready for the new season. That's, I think, very important. Second point that you made, which I think is so important, Carolyn, is I do say, look, you've got to be active to be attractive. Yeah, you've got to be. You won't get fit and attractive by sitting around doing nothing. So, not only while you're working on yourself, it's also working, publicly. So it's both private and public attention that we're giving now. So how people see you in the marketplace is how they will judge you. So here is an opportunity where you can contribute. LinkedIn is a wonderful tool. It's a wonderful platform for you to get active. Join a group, make some commentaries, become a friendly critic and a critical friend. Make contribution, because those things will not go unnoticed. Somewhere, someone will notice the contribution that you're making and will value the contribution that you're making. So this is part of becoming more entrepreneurial. This is, jobs. There never has been and never will be enough jobs for everyone. What we need to do, and it's not just a simple matter of joining in, working the hidden job market and what we've understand about networking and all those sorts of things. We are at a stage where we need to become more creative and actually be creating roles or, creating thoughts that has not been thought of. We can help the leaders of industry to think outside their square, to think about their organization in different ways by becoming active in the and constructively active in in LinkedIn groups, in forums such as this and so on. So my second thing would be, my first thing would be, is like you, Carolyn, is this is a fallow time, but it's not an unproductive time. It's getting your house in order, so to speak. Then we move to taking action and being active to be attractive, attracting attention for all the right sort of reasons, and being strategic about that, rather than taking a shotgun approach, that is, I want to be everywhere at the one time. Choose where you want to be. Be selective. Back yourself. You are a successful person, so back yourself to where you want to be and get active in that space so you are noticed by those decision makers, because they're the ones that you really need to impress.
Yeah, great thoughts.
Excellent. I'll make some now I was making some comments, and one of the things that I want to end, because I also like the idea of entrepreneurial thinking. You're being perceived as a solution provider or a problem solver to that. And I want to end with one of my favorite quotes on this is by Muhammad Yunus, who's the the microfinance revolutionary in Bangladesh, and he said something I'm unable to find exactly. But he said on the lines that we were all entrepreneurs at the beginning of the human race. But as the industrialization came, we all became labor. We think that we are not entrepreneurial. And I think I want to distinguish the fact between being an entrepreneur and having an entrepreneurial thinking. They are two distinct. I'm not going to suggest people to just stop looking for work and become an entrepreneur. That's not the point. That's not the point that we all are making. What we are saying is while you're looking for work or upskilling yourself, and think the world as a marketplace. There are some fantastic points, and I'm going to make some, a chart or something to give this out to people. So once again, I really want to thank you. My sincere apologies for the video and audio cutting through, but we survived. In this LinkedIn Live. And Alan, thank you very much for agreeing to be part of this. Caroline, thank you
Thank you.
very much for agreeing to be part of this. I hope that this brings some perspective to all those listeners. I will also try to see if I can cut this, video in a short, and then also, share it on LinkedIn. But if you got any questions to me, Alan, Alan Gattenby, as you can see on the screen, he's very generous in sharing his knowledge. I've been very fortunate to be on the receiving part of his knowledge. And Caroline, very dear friend. So both of you, please connect with them. If you got any questions for me, please don't hesitate. Lastly, what I would say is that if you want to, also I do run a podcast, which is by the same name, Your Career Down Under. If you want to binge listen, go to iTunes or your favorite podcast app and just put Your Career Down Under. And the way you watch Netflix House of Cards, you can actually listen
Yes.
to the Your Career Down Under podcast, 47 episodes. They're all
It's
filled
chance
with
to
as
start a
much
new-
suspense and yeah. But actually, any last word from you, Alan, before we wrap this up?
Really, I should just thank the people who have been listening to us. I really like to thank you, Carolyn, to Nayashat, for providing me with an opportunity to share insight. And I found it inspiring to listen to both of you, not just in this session, but in the preparatory work that we've also done. And I think that's what it's really about, is understanding that no one has to walk alone. That we always have someone with whom we can walk if we're prepared to look. Being active to be attractive, really just what I meant to also add to that is be active and attractive online, on paper, in person. I wish you every success in your endeavors, and be happy.
And thank you. It's been a pleasure to listen to both of you. Thanks for the opportunity, Naisha, and thanks for everything that you've shared, Alan. And yeah, I just want to reiterate that we're here. That's what we do. That's what we enjoy doing. That's what our passion is doing, is actually helping people get to where you want to go. And we've helped a lot of people in our own ways navigate uncertainty and find jobs. I share a lot of stuff online. I share what other people are sharing online. So we're here, basically. That's what I'd like to say.
Excellent. All right, everyone, stay safe. Keep using hand sanitizer. I really wanted to bring this thing in the context, but
excuse me, I'm just off to work.
But yeah, stay safe. Keep social distance. Virtual distance doesn't matter. But stay safe. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Naish.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Cheers. Thanks, man. Bye.